to share it.
Yeah, if you want to share, go ahead and share, Dilip. Yep.
Let me pull, give me a second. Let me pull.
Yeah. Okay.
The document. Oh. I think I'm. Okay. Right. Uh-huh. Let me share. Okay. Are you able to see it?
Yep, I can see it. I hope other folks can see it now.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, great.
So let's start with it, right? So we ask all of you to read the document, right? So let's start with section 1, right? So I'm looking through the requirement specification document. This section 1 should not be anything new, right? This is something that you already have seen it before. Hang on. So that, any questions on the overview or problem statement? Let me ask.
Before you move forward, did you guys watch the video as well? I think I sent out a video link as well. So not sure if you guys had a chance to watch the video link, along with the actual going through the document as well.
I read the documents, but I didn't get a chance to watch the video.
Okay, all right, that's fine. How
Okay,
about other? Yeah.
Let me
other
ask you,
folks? Yeah, go
Solar
ahead.
and Jean, would you had a chance to read through the documents?
Yeah, I read the document, but I didn't watch the video.
What about you, Solar?
Yeah, I watched the video and I read the document, but I didn't finish it.
Okay. So like it's as you go, right? I would also recommend as opposed to this session, watch the video to get a little bit better understanding if you have any other questions. But let's go through each of the sections. So any questions on section 1.1 or 1.2? All right. Again, please make it interactive, right? It's not me just kind of walking you through that. It's your questions and your understanding. It's important here.
So this is a typical software requirement document. Okay, if you are dealing in the waterfall methodology, following that, this would be, you will get something similar basically for every project. Now, if you are working on the agile, we'll talk about agile, I think a little bit down the, maybe after a couple of sessions. But this is kind of like a form of end-to-end requirements for the software that's supposed to be built. And this is written by the business analyst, right? So you as a QA, you are recipient of the document along with the developers. And you are reading this document, trying to understand what they are trying to build in the system. Yeah. That's the whole purpose of for you to go through this reading exercise and so forth. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, and I would say is even in the agile world, right? You will get something similar on a smaller scale for specific things or modules or components that you may be working within that sprint. Okay, but the basic underlying, it's the similar information that you will get the requirement, which talks about the same thing. So let me ask a question. Who can walk me through this context diagram based on your understanding? What does this mean to you when you read through this document?
Can I explain?
Yeah.
So I was just following where the arrows were going to. So the dealer will be sending over the payment calculation to Arfloan, and Arfloan will be sending the loan review reports to the dealer. And then same thing for the credit application, notification, and to submit the credit application, it's vice versa, the dealer and Arfloan. And the lenders will be sending in the approval or rejection of the credit application to Arfloan, and then Arfloan will be sending over the notification for that to the lenders. So that's what I got out of this context diagram.
Yeah, so you're spot on, Pooja, right? So this is what is the two key stakeholder or users, right? So dealers and lenders, how they will interact with the system, right? So think around and logically, if you look at the overview statement, right, which talks about, hey, if I'm a dealer, right, when somebody walks in, what is the first thing I'm going to do it? I'm going to check it as, hey, if you need to take loan of X amount, what will be your monthly payment, right? So that's what they will be checking with the system is that, hey, based on a principal amount, how much will be monthly installment? They will interact with that with the end customer, right? And they said, can you afford it, this much monthly payment? And if the answer is yes, then they will work through submit a credit application, right? Which is the second arrow going into the system. Once they submit the credit application is going to notify to the lenders that, hey, you have something out there for review it. The dealer will review it and make a decision whether they're going to approve or reject that credit application. So they will go and input that information into the system. And at that point, system is essentially going to give notification back to the dealer that, hey, your credit application is approved or rejected, right? And occasionally, the dealer is going to get the reports out from the system in terms of how many outstanding loans they have it, which is kind of they've submitted. So they will like it's work through it. So that's essentially in a nutshell, the context diagram is going to tell it is how the various actor is going to interact with the system. Okay, any questions? Okay,
No.
then this one is essentially giving you how the functionally, the various functions going to be forming it within the Arfloan, right? So it's a functional breakdown or a functional decomposition view of that, hey, Arfloan has this 7 capabilities that it's going to form from it. Okay. Then the next section is going to talk about the business processes, right? What are the business processes the business is going to use it, the system with it, and at what point it'll get invoked, what will be the outcomes, and what are the business rules that needs to be followed, right? So this one is an example of how somebody's going to manage the dealer shops within the system, right? And at what point this process is going to get started, right? What causes this process to invoke? So essentially, if your agent is going to go out and sign up a new dealer to be using the platform, that's when this thing is going to be invoked, right? And then what happens is after this process is complete is essentially the dealer is successfully going to be onboarded into the system. And then the users are the people who work at the dealer shop are able to log into the systems and then utilize all the loan financing features. Okay. And then what rules is going to follow? It's here are the 2 business rules that's going to occur during the business process. And the next section talks about what kind of data at a high level it's going to be stored for a dealer into the system. Okay. Any questions on this one as you read through it?
No.
Sola, Jean, anything from your viewpoint?
No.
No.
So let me just add here something. So if you look at the functional decomposition, right? So it talks about what are the different capabilities, right? So you have managed dealers, managed users, managed lenders, loan calculator. So these are like a high level functionality within the system. And the business process diagram is like a 1 level down or for every function. So you have managed dealer, right? So now you are going in a little bit further details for the managed dealers and talking about, okay, what is involved for managing a dealer. Now, did you guys understand what managed dealer is? I mean, why they need to manage a dealer in the system?
No.
Okay, anybody else?
No.
Okay, so you have to you understand the process, right? What happens if you look at the context diagram and read the description here, right? So I mean, when somebody is writing a software, somebody, I mean, basically, Arfloan is doing the Arfloan is going door to door on the dealers, and they're signing them up, right, as part of this overall software application or some business process. So what happens once they sign up? Dealer says, yes, I wanna use your platform basically to get more customers, or I can do more repairs, or get the loan for my customer and those things. So what this Arfloan will do, Arfloan company who is paying for this system, is they are saying, okay, dealers have signed up. Now we need to set them up in the system so that they can start using the system. That's where this managed dealer comes in. They need to go in, somebody from Arfloan will go in and set up the dealers into the system. So it's more like a keying in the dealer information, setting them up before the dealer can do any other functions, basically in the systems. So those capabilities mentioned, like manage dealers, it's like a setting up a dealer. Manage lender is a setting up a lender, because the overall process basically needs to be established within the system. And that's where this different management function comes into play. Now there are other functions, I think, as we go through the business processes, Dilip will talk about, but this is how the software is designed. So they are giving ability to set up the dealer, set up the lender, set up the users as well, because users needs to be also, user also needs to be accessing the system as well, right? To basically perform the activities or tasks. Somebody has to go and submit a credit application. Somebody has to go and approve or reject a credit application. So overall flow needs to occur within the system. So for every function that you saw in the functional decomposition, they have corresponding business process. What happens and so forth. So we looked at one. So now we'll look at the second one. Is everybody clear how this is organized? You will find that in the real life. I mean, this is how they have written the documents as well. They will write it, capture the requirements from the business standpoint, and then they will hand it over to developers and quality assurance. And you need to understand the business process by looking at this type of documents. Okay, yeah, go ahead, Dilip.
All right. So let's switch it, right? Again, I want this to be interactive. So if you have questions, please speak up, right? Otherwise, I'm going to assume that you understood everything, and then we're going to keep moving. So the second process is around managing the users. So this one, it talks about how you're going to manage the various users who are using the system.
Can you
And
go
what
back
are
to
the
the previous,
rules?
please?
Say that again.
Can you go back to the previous page? The 2 point, yeah. So talking about this page, what do you mean by the source and example? Just like the dealer's name that shows the source. What do you mean source and what do you mean what's the example?
No, so this one, what it talks about is when they capture the requirements, right? Let's say you had multiple stakeholders. So it talks about from where this data is going to come.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
And in the scenario where it's not clear, that'll ask you an example, right? So they may just say, hey, if you don't know how the franchise number gets calculated, give the example, right?
Oh,
Sometimes in this case, later on in the document, they've clearly outlined how the franchise number gets calculated. So they didn't feel the need to put an example, right? But if you're pulling the system or information from some other systems, then they will put it, what is the source from where this data is coming. In this case, there's no additional source because all this data is getting created in the system itself. Right? That's why you're seeing it's create, read, and update
Right.
in here.
I
Okay.
have a question. What does dead mean? It was one of the data attributes.
So what it means is like it's inactive. That means this dealer is not active in the system. That means they are not submitting, will not be able to submit any credit application. Active means they are able to submit the credit application. That means if the dealer has already kind of offboarded from your platform and says they are not going to be part of this Arfloan ecosystem anymore, then they will like it's transition them to, hey, we are not going to use this dealer anymore.
Okay.
Right? So it's a life cycle stages of that. Somebody who is kind of active, that means they're submitting. Inactive is they still want to be in the platform, but they're not submitting or they're not ready to submit it system. Okay. All right. So ready to go to the manage users?
Yes.
Okay. So this one, like it's if you look at it, it talks about all the functionality. And then it talks about what type of user role can access those functionality, right? So a lot of times you will hear something like super user or site administrator. It'll be the person who has essentially a rights to grant people access or right to create certain things. So if you look into the super user, they could do everything with the exception of approving or denying credit applications, right? And if you think about it, right, who is providing the credit or loans? It's provided by lenders, right? You don't want somebody to go and approve or reject credit applications who is not able to provide those funds. Therefore, you're not going to be able to see it, super user, be able to do that functionality. Same thing, it's for dealer, right? So think around logically, look at that and says, does it make sense? Right? If not, you should ask those questions to the people who created those requirements. Says, hey, why the area manager is not able to utilize loan calculator? Maybe they don't need to have that access to that functionality, right? And then it just talks about when a user gets created, what kind of data you need to provide it. And then if you see something like ... that means there are additional fields. And in this case, if you don't know it, you should ask it, but we have provided those details into the system design document. So that's where you go back. Remember, we talked about one of the trait you need to look at is the information consistent? So you look into it and says, hey, it's not complete here, but it is complete in the system design document. It is consistent from here to system design document. Therefore, it's good or bad, right? Everybody with me on what it means when we talk about 3CNT?
Yes.
Yes.
And here are the rules that you anticipate that business process to follow, right? In this case, it is, you need to validate, is it consistent with the table that they have provided? Because it's the similar information that is provided here versus there, right? So you need to make sure it doesn't contradict each other. Any questions? So the same thing goes at, right? So you had managed dealers, managed users, now it's a managed lenders. Same structure. When this process is going to be invoked, what kind of data is going to create it for the lenders? What does it mean when managed lender means? Good. Ready to move on to the next one?
Yes.
So another functional decomposition was loan calculator, right? So when does this come into the picture? Who does it, right? So this is the process of calculating loan payment based on the loan amount, right? This is used when dealership needs to provide an estimate of how much monthly loan amount will be for a repair, right, to the customer. And then when it finishes, you will be able to get that data and then share it with the customer.
Okay.
And this is where it is, what data it uses. It's the loan amount that's going to get entered
Right.
by the dealer, right? So that's a created amount, right? It doesn't exist. You're going to create that. And then system provides it. So there is a read-only data that is what is going to be minimum monthly payment. They don't want that payment to be altered by the dealer. They just want to enter the input, and then they should be reading whatever the system provides. Okay. Same thing for credit application.
Yeah.
Right. Now, in this case, you had a PDF. So if you read it towards the end of your requirements document, there was an attachment. That's what this is about. What all data is required, everything that is specified into that credit application. Okay. And this is where the rule kicks in, right? So after the dealer submits the credit application, the lender gets notified. So if you recall it in the context diagram, there was an arrow going from a system to the lenders for the notification. So that's how you connect the dots from what the process is, what the context diagram, and what the components are. Okay. Same thing for a dealer when they approve or reject the credit application going through it. Any question to the section 2.3? Herschel, you want to add anything else?
No, actually, yeah. So I think understanding the business process is very important. What is the trigger for every process? What happens during the process and so forth. So that's something you need to understand in order for you to do the quality assurance, basically your testing side of things. Okay. You are not writing the document, but you need to understand what they are trying to build, what type of business processes the system is going to support, so that you can test it or come up with the testing quality assurance activities. Okay, so that's the reason we are going through this document.
So if you recall it, right, we talked about the Amazon, buying things from Amazon example, right? It's the same thing. Hey, you may have it like display all the product as a component, right? The other one would be is shop a given item, right? Put it into the cart. Then there will be a checkout, and then there will be a payment, and then there will be track shipment status. Similar way, right? This is what's happening into the Arfloan. If you have to test the capabilities of Amazon, right, you need to understand all those processes so that you can write it different scenarios of testing it to see if the system meets those requirements or not. That's what the business process helps you to understand. What are the overarching scenarios and the use cases that you need to consider? Okay.
So this type of requirement, is it functional requirements?
So these are functional, right? So it's not telling you what are the characteristics of the system, but it is telling you what users will do in the systems, what are the inputs they will provide when the particular process or component gets invoked. And when it finishes, what will be the outcome after that process is complete.
Okay.
And then like it's, as you will see the structure, right?
Right.
The initially all functional requirements, and then there is a, what we call a non-functional requirements. It's going to be following it. Any questions, right? So that's what you're seeing. It's all the functions for individual and organization. And this goes back to similar to what you had it. This is where you need to validate it. The managed user gave you who can access what kind of functionality. Now, when you look into section 2.5, it talks the similar thing, right? As a site administrator, what all functions I can do it, right? As a dealer user, what are the things that I can do it in the system, right? So this is where you look into and say, hey, it's the same information presented. Is it consistent from that section to this section? If not, you should raise the question is, hey, this is not consistent. What do you mean? You want to do it this, or you want to do it this, or you want to both? All right. Here is the another view. This is called a lot of times the entity diagrams or UML diagrams. And this refers to the same thing. As a site administrator, here are the capabilities or functions I can access. As a dealer user, here are the things I do it. And here are the additional things that get kicked off if that as part of that functionality. So again, consistency, right? You see it, the same information is presented in different format. Make sure it's consistent. This helps you to understand the overall picture of how the system needs to be operated. Okay. Then the next section, any question till so far, section 2.5? Okay. So now the next section goes into the detail, right? We talked about the managed dealer shops as a functional component when we did the decomposition. We talked about when that get will invoked and a part of what business process. Now it goes into the detail. It says, what are the requirements for you to consider when you're implementing that capabilities? So here, a perfect example, right? The managed dealer shop, one of the things that everything, a unique franchise number will get assigned. So this gets it, well, what do you mean by unique franchise number? How does that get created? So this gives you a logic of how that particular franchise number needs to be calculated. So it's just going to say it, hey, it comes out from 2-digit state, 2-digit county, and 3-digit auto increment number. So what it tells me is that when somebody's creating a dealer shop, make sure they provide where they're located from a state and a county point of view so that we can actually create a franchise number from it. Okay. The other thing it says that for every dealer, when you create it, make sure the Arfloan rep has to be assigned. Okay. Then there are notes capability that they wanted, like it's part of managing dealer shop. Every time you visit it, you want to be able to capture the notes in the system, what activity you did it while you visited that dealer, right? So an ARF rep, when they're signing up a dealer, they will just say, hey, this dealer is going to be able to provide this kind of services. So let's just make sure that all of those setup is set it up accordingly. Any question?
No.
So as you go through it, you need to make sure that if you apply 3CNT rule for each one of this requirement, can you test it? So for example, do you have enough information to create a franchise number? And if somebody creates the dealer into the system, do you have ability to validate it? Yes? Right. Same thing goes for managed users. What are the requirements? A lot of times you will see things like a business priority. And what it means is, here are the requirements that needs to be implemented first, then what will be the second order and what will be the third order. Typically, that is helpful when you say, hey, I need to do it like it's more in agile world, then they will say, it's okay, let's just first focus on all of the high priority requirements, make sure that gets done. Then you look into the medium and low priority requirements. Okay. Same things, it's so you can start seeing the pattern, right? So there is a requirements for each of the components. So whether it's for managing the lender, doing a loan calculation, submitting a credit applications, or whether it's approval and rejection of credit applications. Same pattern. I have a requirement. Can I read through it? Do I understand it? Can I test it? Is it complete? Is it consistent? Right? And is it correct? Does it belong into this particular functionality order? So let me pause here and say, do you have any specific questions for any of those sections and any of those requirements? Do you understand what each one is trying to tell you?
Yeah, I have a question.
Uh-huh.
Talked about the franchise creation. How is it created? The franchise number created?
So this is going to be created in the system, right? And it's giving you a logic of how it's going to be created, right? So think around it. I am trying to sign up or create a new dealer shop into the system, right? So I have to provide some sets of information. So when you look into going up here, right, it says, when I'm creating a dealer, what do I need to provide? I need to provide that address. And as part of address, that means I need to provide a location, which state they're located, which county they're located. If I don't provide any of the information, then it says, hey, I need at least that two piece of information in order to create this franchise number. Right? So you should see it as you read into the detail. It says, as a dealer is created, is the state and the county information is required information or not? Right? And then if once they provide it, then it tells you what the logic system should use it to create franchise number. So as a quality assurance person, right, you should try to create a franchise, try to create a dealership. System is going to generate it, and then you just see it and validate it. Is it using the same formula that is outlined in this requirement to create those franchise number? Okay. Question?
Yeah. So where does the word consistency, where does it come in?
So consistency means if there are two places which tells you how to generate the franchise number, is it telling you the same information or is it giving you contradictory? That's where the consistency comes in. Right? We talked about who should have access to what functionality. It's already kind of showed it in two different places. Is it consistent? That's where the consistency comes. So are they telling you what system should behave it consistently, or they're telling you one thing at one place, another thing at the other place?
Okay.
Right. Then you don't know, right? What should be the behavior of the system? Should it be as defined in one place, or should it be as defined in the other place? So you should resolve those things as quickly as possible, right? Because otherwise, you don't know how the system should be implemented.
All right.
Right? And your job as quality assurance person is to flag those kind of inconsistency as early as possible, even before somebody's sitting to do the design.
Mhm.
That's why you're reviewing this document first. Okay. Any other questions? All right. Then one of the other module was talked about the ad hoc reporting, right? So I should be able to generate the report from the system And then this section talks about what the report should look like and what level of information or criteria that the user can specify. And it's going to be different reporting ability depending on what your role is. So your agents will be able to see it only for the area that they're responsible for. When you talk about the managers, managers should be able to see everything for all of the representatives that they report under their area, right? The regional manager will be able to see it so that you can see it, right? That all of the subsequent information is still remain the same. There are additional details gets in for reps, additional detail gets to the area manager. And when you look at the super user, they should be able to do it for everybody in the system. Okay. Any questions?
No.
Right. Then it talks about the data and attribute requirements, right? And then they say it's defined in Appendix A, so you should look for it. Is there an Appendix A in the system, in the document? Right. So do you guys find an Appendix A in the document? Yes, no? Right. And if no, does it contain all of the attribute related definitions? So all of those section 2, everything was a functional requirement. Now we talk about the non-functional requirement. That means what should be the operational characteristic of the system is going to be. Right. So one of the first operational requirements, you're going to see it, is since this is a financial system for the credit, loan, and applications, right? There are certain rules that the government has put into those. And then one of that rule is you need to be able to audit every changes that happen in the system. So this requirement says that every time somebody makes any change to any credit applications, system should be able to track it, and somebody should be able to go and look into those logs and says what was changed by whom. Okay. Does it impact your function? No, right? Because this is just a tracking or tracking what changes are made into the application. So that's why this part of non-functional requirements. Same thing goes for exception handling. When things go wrong, how would system behave it, right? So let's say I'm trying to put a credit application and I didn't provide all the right information, or there are some missing information and try to submit it, right? This tells you that system should notify the user, hey, your credit application is not successfully be able to enter. Here are the errors that you can look into it. Okay. The availability talks about how long the system should be up, from what to what operational hours, right? Since this is mainly going to be used by the dealer, dealers are typically open early in the morning and some till late in the night, right? So this is 6 a.m. to 10 p.m. Eastern time zone. That's what it just talks about. That any window outside it, system may be down for the maintenance. But at a minimum, they're expecting it that the system should be available between this time zones. Then it talks about scalability. How many users overall in the system and how many concurrent users, and what is the growth are you expecting it? So that when you design the system, you understand it, what the parameters that you need to use it to handle through the system. In this case, they talk about in the first year, they're expecting 500 users, and out of which 10% or 50 people will log in concurrently. So you need to make sure that the system is designed to allow at least 50 users work concurrently. Same example we talked about in the Amazon, right? The Black Friday, millions of users. So they talk about how many people will log in concurrently. Occasionally you see it, right? If the site is very busy, you see some sort of a message or you see buffering, right? That's a characteristics that system is being used by more than the number of users that it was designed for. Okay. So you need to test it and say, hey, if there are 50 users who are currently able to log in into the system, and two, when they perform it, is the system response time is still reasonable? If it's not, then you flag it and says, hey, the system is not meeting its scalability requirements. Same thing goes for accessibility, right? Where the people should be able to access the system from. Do they need to go into the office or they can do it from anywhere? Right. In this case, they said it should be accessible through the internet. That means you don't have to actually technically go into the dealer shop in order to access the system. You can go into the web browser and access it from there, as long as you have right user ID, password, and credentials. Okay. Then the next thing talks about the performance. If I'm trying to perform some operation in the system, how long it before I get the response? Right. So it talks about if I'm doing a real-time interaction, then it needs to give me less than 2 seconds for 99% of the time. But if I'm generating a report, it says it may take up to a minute to get the reports generated. Then it talks about the redundancy and failover, right? Because the system needs to run on some computer. What happens when that computer fails? Right? Should I have automatic? Since this is a non-critical system, it says it is okay if you go down. Just restart the machine and whatever the downtime is, that's a downtime. But then there is a requirement on terms of data backup, right? It says that all of the data should be backed up every night. So if I have to restore it after the failure, at the most I'll lose it today's data. I should be able to restore it till the last time. And then how long it should take it to recover from disaster or failovers, it defined it. It's like tier 3 application, which is typically a 1 week. You can recover it within a 1 week, you're gonna be good. Right. The tier 1 and tier 2 applications are usually have a day or an hours type of recovery time. Right. Think around it. If you are a system which is managing your finances or bank information, you can't afford it to be down for a week, right? Because you will not have able to access your money. So typically, depending on what the criticality is, it's going to be very high recovery. So if you're using a 911 system, right, it will be a redundant, right? So even if your one server fails, you should still be able to make an emergency calls and reach to an emergency systems, right? So this type of requirements tells you what should be operational characteristics. In this case, since it's a non-critical systems, they are just saying it's okay. Because remember, higher the redundancies, higher the recovery requirements are, the more the money, right? Because you now have to provision multiple computers. In the scenario one fails, the system still works it. So those equates to uptime, equates to additional testing, as well as additional money to support those requirements. From a quality assurance person, right? You should be able to say, what if I bring the server down? What happens to my transactions? Can I recover it back? And can I recover it back up to previous time?
So can I add something here, Dilip?
Yeah, go ahead.
So yeah, so as you guys saw, right? So there are functional requirements and there are non-functional requirements, right? So what Dilip is going through right now is a non-functional requirement section. Now there are quality assurance folks as a QA, generally 99 or I would say 95% of the time, you will focus on functionality. functional, you will focus on the functional requirements. Now there are specialized quality assurance people. They focus on the testing the non-functional requirements. So kind of like a performance testers, load testers. You will hear all kind of different kind of testers. They focus on the basically focus on testing the availability of the system, performance of the system, backup and archiving and recovery and all kind of stuff. But they are non-functional quality assurance folks. Okay. What we're gonna focus in this camp is mainly the functional side of things. Now it's good to know the technical words. What does the backup means? What does the archiving means, right? So you can always Google those terminologies and get familiar with it. Basically, whatever is specified in this document. But as I just wanted to emphasize that you will be pretty much focusing on functional type of requirements if you end up in the real world, unless you are going in as you are working as a performance testers or load testers and those type of QAs, because there are specialized tools that are used to test the non-functional requirements. Okay. So let me just stop here. If you guys have any questions, just let me know. Otherwise, I'll. Yeah, go ahead, Dilip.
Yeah, no, I'm saying that's all the next section is talks about how long you keep the data for, what is the network communications requirement, what are the disaster recovery requirements. So any questions on any of those before we move into the next section? Okay, so that's what this talks about. And then this is your appendix A, right? What talks about what are the business data and how they are related. So as we go further into the sections, we will talk about the different entity relationship diagrams, the different data entity and the databases. The time we will go into more detail, but what it talks about is how each one of the entities is going to be uniquely identified, right? So dealer is going to have a dealer number or franchise number. User is going to have a user ID. Credit application is going to have application ID. What it kind of contains it. Okay. How many of those expected to store in the database? So you can do some sort of designing in database requirement computation. And what is the growth expected over the X number of years? Okay. Any questions? And then this is a low fidelity screen. So this gives you an idea of how the information is going to be attached. You also should have a printout. And then the last section is talking about the attachment that I talked about, credit application that was in the one of the previous sections, right? So what all attributes you're going to store it and so on. So any questions? Let me pause here for system specification document. Everybody's quiet, so I'm assuming it's you understood the overall requirements document, how the functional requirements are associated, right? All right. Let's go into then design document, right? So think around the software development lifecycle, right? In the analysis phase,
Dilip,
get,
so you're just gonna go in the high level overview, right? Because I think they need to go through the requirements document since some of them have not gone through it fully and understand a little bit further. So,
yeah, I just want to like it's talk through the structure of it.
Okay, all right.
So that like it's when they read it, both the documents, they're able to connect the dots.
Yep. Okay, sounds good. Yep.
Okay. So when you look into the SDLC, right? You had the analysis phase. This is where the requirements get together. And then now you have a design phase, which says, how am I going to build a system in order to fulfill those requirements? So if I go back to the house analogy that we were talking about, right? What kind of house I want to build it, what are the features, capabilities in the house should be, is the analysis phase. Then getting a blueprint of how I'm going to build it, how floors should be located, how wide each of the rooms should be, that's a detailed design. Same thing in the software development world. You put together a specification document that talks about what are the capabilities you need in the system. Now, this talks about how you will go about designing the system. Okay, so you will always start with it. What are the kind of high-level overview? But then you go into what are the system characteristics needs to be it, right? So this ties to some of the functional requirement and some of the non-functional requirements. What is the business area? What kind of security you want to put it together, right? And I'm going to go through it quickly because I wanted you to read through it, and we can it's kind of review it in the next session when we talk about the question and answer, right? Then it talks about what are the architecture drivers. So essentially, what are the guardrails that you need to use it in order to build a system, right? So one of the things we talked about is that, hey, system needs to be accessible through the internet, and it needs to be in Azure cloud. That was one of the requirements that was put into the initial system specification document. So then it talks about, hey, it needs to be a cloud deployment because that is what they require for that. Then you look into the business context diagram from a system point of view. So this should look very familiar, right? So this is the system. This is the dealer. This is the lender. So this should mimic a lot more to your context diagram that you saw it in the requirements document. Then it talks about, at a high level, how is the system diagram is going to look like. Then it goes into the detail around, remember we had the users and what functionality they can access. So this goes about what are the security roles you're going to have it and what kind of access they have it, right? So these things should mimic what you have it. This is where the consistency comes in. Do you have requirements in the system design document consistent? If not, you should flag that. Okay. Then it talks about the context diagram. What are the inputs and outputs to the system? Remember, we talked about functional requirements, talks about what are input, what are output, what are the processing rules, and what are the error handling. That's what this talks about. Similar to the functional decomposition diagram, this is how the functions are going to be broken down. What are the modules going to be built into the system and how those interact. If you recall the definition of system architecture, it's essentially what are the components of the system, what are the relationships, and what are the interfaces to it. That's what this one talks about. Right, so every component, what are the capabilities going to be built into it? Then it talks about the logical data model. So it goes through it. When somebody says a user, well, what does user contains? All the information. This goes into detail. What should be the data type, whether it's required or it's an optional? What is the purpose of each information or each pieces of data? Same thing goes for your end users, for dealers, what needs to happen for lenders. And then remember, one of the things that needs to be notes, right? I should be able to capture all the notes at the dealer, what it contains. So what I would like you to understand the structure and then read it through the detail and map it. Is it consistent from what you saw it in the system design and system requirements document? Okay. Then you're going to look into the component which talks about how the interaction is going to happen between the system and external system. Remember, the notification is through the emails. Emails is not part of the system. It's going to be some email server. So how does system interact with those email system? It's going to be talk about the integration aspect. In our example of Amazon, right? The system interaction is going to be with the payment gateways, with your shipping carrier systems. Those are the interfaces that they need to interact with the system. Then this talks about what is the architecture going to use it. Remember, we talked about 6 different types of software architecture. How this particular application is going to be implemented is what is laid out in the designs document. And one of the other important thing is going to lay out is how the system is going to organize from the user faces or different pages information. So if I'm a dealer user, let me see if I can zoom in, right? And if I log in from there, what will I see it? What functions will access it from where, right? So when I try to get it the first time into the system, it's going to prompt me with the login page. And once I successfully log in, it's going to take me to the dealer homepage. And from there, I can access the loan calculation functionality or credit application functionality or checking the loan status functionality. So this gives you a lot more page flow diagram of how the information flows into the system. And at what point all the different pages come into the system. Okay. And then there is any other supporting documents for the system. That's how the system design document is structured, is to augment, or the way I say it is one click further from the requirements document as how the details are associated and how the system is going to be implemented. Any questions?
Just want to emphasize a couple of things on the design document, right? So design document is geared towards developers. So some senior developer or lead architect, basically, they will create this design document, and they will give it to the developers to build the different components of the system. So they and from quality assurance standpoint, right? Because there is a lot more technical here. So you are not that technical. So, but what you want to understand from this document is system design document is how they are going to build the system. What are the different pages they are building? So like login page, dealer homepage, then you can go to the loan calculator. So you want to understand that flow from your standpoint. Okay, so that's the important part for quality assurance from this document. Plus, if you find any inconsistency, if you are technical in nature, you can find some inconsistencies, but otherwise, it's good to know that, hey, they are building the N-tier application architecture. It's built using the .NET framework, some technologies, basically, and so forth. But it's a black box to you. I mean, generally to the quality assurance. So you will not understand how they write the code or anything. So you don't have to worry about that. That's a good part. But you need to understand how they are planning to build the different pages, how many pages they are building, and how can I get from one page to another page. So that when it comes to writing the test cases or test scenarios, you can quickly write the steps and details for testing it. Requirements document is the most important document for you guys. Understand the functionality, understand different types of users, understand the business process so that you can write the test scenarios based on that. Okay. That's the most important part.
Yeah, and if you see
ahead.
any conflict or inconsistency, you should go by the system requirements document and then ask your designer or lead developer to clarify why they did something which is not consistent with the requirements document in the design document.
Yeah, kind of like if you have this page flow diagram, right? That Dilip, I think if you can scroll down, right? Now here, if you don't see dealer accessing loan calculator, then you should have a conversation with the business analyst or the architect saying why they are not able to access loan calculator according to the requirements. they should be able to access loan calculator and calculate the loan functionality. So that's the inconsistency you may find those type of things for the functionality type of thing. Yep.
Right. The other thing you didn't see it here that you should raise it is, remember your system requirements document talks about the reporting also.
Right.
And you don't see a flow for the reporting, right? You don't see it, your ARF rep or ARF managers able to generate those reports. You don't have those flow diagrams. So that's something that you should ask a question. Hey, how do I sign up a new dealer? Where do I go to create a dealer, right? So if you look into the site administrator, right, they have ability to manage the dealer. So that's where you go it and says, okay, if it's the same functionality should be able to use by site administrator as the ARF rep or area managers, should you have another flow that takes you to the managed dealer? So those kind of things that you should ask a question for consistency.
Yep.
Herschel, you want to add anything else?
No, I just wanted to emphasize, I mean, those points here, because these are technical in nature, these documents, this system design specifically, but what's in it for QA, right? So those are some of the things you need to understand from the flow standpoint and so forth. Just getting better understanding of overall system, basically, and business processes. Those are the important part for you guys. Yep. I mean, how they're gonna write the code? Developers are developers. Only they know how they write the code. So nobody else understands other than developers. Yep. And you won't have any role to play for that. Okay.
So here's what I would recommend, right? Now that we walked through it, now that you have a little bit better understanding, read the document again. Watch the video that Herschel has sent it. There was for a lot more interaction and Q&A from the previous sessions that you can see it. Read it, better understand, apply the same 3C and T type of things that we talked about and says, is everything consistent? If not, flag it. What is not consistent? Right. So we can talk about it, because in a week's time, you will start taking this requirements and pulling it apart to see it's how you're going to test each of the requirements. So if you don't understand that whole big picture and how everything fits into the overall system, then you won't be able to talk it through at different scenarios. So that's why it's important for you to understand this requirements document. And don't worry about it. If you read it once and you don't get everything, that's fine, right? In real life also, you will read the requirements probably multiple times, and every time you read it, you will have a little bit better understanding of what it's required in the system.
Okay. Any questions anybody has?
Yeah, please, can you resend the previous video you sent? I didn't receive it.
You should have it, unless I have. Can you paste your email again?
Put it in the chat.
Yeah, put it
Okay.
in the chat.
Okay.
Right. So if you put it in the chat, then he will be able to resend it to you.
Okay.
Did you guys not receive the homework for session 1? Recap. I think I sent it on April 7th. Okay.
I got it.
You
I
have
got
it. Okay. Okay. I just want to make sure I send it out.
Yeah, it was kind of send it out on the same day.
Yeah, and I refer that. I think I have your correct email here, but I'll forward you again. Okay, just to you.
Yeah, I just sent it to you.
Can you just check if you got my email or not? I just sent it to you right now.
Okay.
I just want to make sure you are receiving the email. So. Okay. Just text me if you don't receive it. Okay.
Yeah, I received
But I think you should
it.
have it. Yep.
I
You got
did.
it? Okay,
Yeah.
good, good. All right. Yeah, anything else that you guys want to discuss here? So Thursday sessions, right? I mean, are generally for you guys, we'll review the homework. Today you have reading homework. Probably next week you will have something similar because we're going to talk a little bit further, basically on the requirements, if you have any question or design and so forth. But then the real work starts from after session number or at session 3, basically. So this weekend, this Sunday, is again going to be a little bit theoretical, but then we'll actually start breaking down the requirements starting next week, the week after that, basically. Okay, so let's, you have enough time to at least go through requirements maybe a couple of times between today and next Thursday. They think it that way, right? So that will help you and go through, definitely go through the video link I sent you. I think it's pretty good discussion. A lot of questions, Q&As as part of that, so that it will clarify a lot of things for you guys. And obviously, I have the recording for today's session, but I would suggest you watch that particular recording, so that way it will clarify more things for you. If you, I mean, anybody has any question, we will bring it up here, right? I mean, otherwise we'll wrap up a little bit early today.
No questions.
Okay, no questions. Jean, Sola,
No.
Nana.
No.
All right. So you guys know what work you need to do, right? Now you have gone through the requirements document here. Hopefully the video will help you as well, and at least go through requirements maybe a couple of times more between now and next week. So that way you will have a little bit more understanding of the software thing, and then we will actually dive into the actual work. Okay, well, what you need to do day in and day out. Dilip, you have anything else?
No, I think it's really good. Like it's,
Okay.
as Harshal pointed out, read it a couple of more times. Like it's as you go through it, like it's feel free to send an email to us, or we can even talk it on, if you have specific questions, we can talk it on Sunday as well as next Thursday.
Yep.
Then if there's no questions, we can call it a little bit early tonight.
Yep.
And then see everybody on Sunday at around 8:45.
Yeah, that's correct. Yep,
Okay.
just plan to be a little bit 5-10 minutes early, right? So that we can start class right on time. So,
Thank you.
Thank
all
you.
right.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.
All right. Yes, Nana, do you have a question?
No.
Okay. All right then. Okay. See you guys on Sunday morning. All right. Okay.
All
Thank
right.
you, guys. Bye-bye. Yeah.
Bye.